A very good evening to one and all. Good evening, children. Today we are going to discuss about second year economics. Second year economics, fifth chapter, agricultural sector. And in this agriculture sector, our today's topic is land reforms. Okay, so today's topic is land reforms. So what do we mean by land reforms? Actually, what was the need in after the independence that government implemented this land reforms? So we have to discuss, children, about this one. Children, as already you learned in your one of the previous classes that when the Britishers they ruled the country, they started a system called as zamindari system, mahalwari system, royotwari system, jagirdari system. What was this system, children? These were the systems. It means that they appointed a powerful local person from the village for the collection of revenue, collection of taxes. So the work of these zamindars, these jagirdars, these mahalwars was that they had to collect the taxes from the farmers and they had to submit that amount to the Britishers. That means they were in the middle of farmers and the Britishers as a mediators. But as the time went on, children, these mediators became very strong, became this the way of collection of taxes became very exploitative. Means in the collection of taxes they used to harass the people, the common farmer. They used to sell their lands, they used to torture them physically, mentally. So after the independence, what happened in the year 1948, government implemented land reforms. Government implemented land reforms. So what is this land reform? We have to discuss now. So here's the definition of the land reforms. Government direct intervention. Intervention means interference. Intervention to bring about the changes in agrarian means agriculture structure is called as land reforms. What does it mean, children? The government is interfering. Government is interfering in agriculture structure to bring certain changes. Okay, the agriculture structure related to land. So that called as land reforms. Bring certain changes in agricultural structure. Government interferes in this one, brings certain measures that we call as land reforms. So, after learning this definition of land reforms, what are the objectives of land reforms? For what purpose these land reforms were implemented? There are many important objectives are there. Out of that, I had taken only few. The objectives of the land reforms, children: protection of the tenants from exploitation. To whom you call as tenants? The people who work on the land of landlords on rent. What do you say in your Telugu? Kaulu Raitulu. So the protection of all those tenants, protection of all those tenants from exploitation. Who is exploiting them? Zamindars, Jagirdars, Mahalwars were exploiting. So to protect all those tenants from the exploitation, land reforms were introduced. Second one, provision of security of tenure to the tiller. Provision of security. What is this provision of security? Providing security to the tiller. Tiller means the person who tilled the land, the tenants, the person who is tilling the land. So giving him the security of time period, because in those days it was a wish of the zamindars. Anytime they can appoint tenants and anytime they can throw out these tenants from their work. But under this land reforms, compulsory a tenant can work continuously for a fixed period of time. That is tenure means time period. So security given to the tiller. Next one, assurance of equality. Assurance of equality of status. What is this assurance of equality of status, children? To whom they are going to give equality? To all the sections of rural people. In rural areas we find almost all the sections of people will be there, and especially in that one we find that the people belong to the poorer section. So all those people, equality of status will be given by this land reforms. How? By providing the land to the tillers, security to the tenants, distribution of land to the landless laborers. Next, provision of land ownership to the weaker section. So all those people, those who are very weak, landless people, so giving them the land ownership. We are going to discuss after a few minutes. What are those one? So in this objective, the provision is given to the weaker section to get the land ownership. Next one, rational use of scarce land resources. Rational use. Rational use of scarce. You know, scarce means limited. As you all know that as the population increase, the land will not increase. The land remains the same. So, the proper use of the land that is scarce. The proper use of the land that is scarce should be used by this land reforms. So, these are children called as the objectives of land reforms. Okay, so this is a very important children for you from the examination point of view. After these objectives, we have children, next one, the components. The components of land reforms. We have to discuss about the components of land reforms. Okay, so now about the components. So, the components. Components of land reforms we have to discuss. What are those components? There are nearly 5 components are there by the name abolition. By the name abolition of intermediaries. Intermediaries is the first component. Second one, that is tenancy reforms. Second one is tenancy reforms is the second one. The third one is ceilings on land holdings. Ceiling on land holding is the third one. The fourth one, children, after this one is about consolidation of land holding. Consolidation of land holding. And the last one is cooperative farming. Cooperative farming. Children, these are the important components of land reforms. So this is an important question for you. So let us discuss one by one all these components. I hope it is clear. There are nearly 5 components are there. Abolition of intermediaries, tenancy reforms, ceilings on land holdings, consolidation of land holdings, cooperative farming. So let us discuss one by one all these components. So let us start first with the first component. Let us start first with the first component. What is this first component? First component is the abolition of intermediaries. To whom we call as intermediaries, mediators. Already I told you what were the system that was started by the Britishers. That was called as Zamindari system. That was called as Jagirdari system. That was called as Mahalwari system. These were the 3 systems, children, that was started by the Britishers for the collection of revenue, for the collection of taxes. These people, they worked as a mediators. They worked as a mediators for the collection of taxes. One more system was there by the name Riyotwari system. Riyotwari system where the farmers, they pay directly, they pay taxes directly to the Britishers. So this system is not exploitative. Okay, so these 3 systems were there that were very highly exploitative. So what happened? After the independence, the government of India observed that these systems were creating a lot of problem to the tenants for the production to number of poor people also. So what they did, in the year 1948, they passed the land reforms and they abolished all the zamindari, jagirdari, mahalwari, riotwari system, everything children, they abolished. They abolished everything, and they enacted that what you call number of laws children from the 1951 to 56. Laws were enacted. Laws were enacted where the complete procedures were given about the payment of taxes. So this is children abolition of intermediaries. I hope it is clear. I hope this land reform is clear. So what is the intermediaries? Zamindari, Jagirdari, Mahalwari system were abolished. Okay. So government started taking the taxes directly from the people instead of these mediators. Mediators. Okay. This is clear. Next one. What is the next component children after the abolition of intermediaries? We are having tenancy reforms. Second one is tenancy reforms. Tenancy reforms is the second one children. Tenants, to whom we call as a tenant. Tenant means a person who cultivate the land of a landlord on rent. Who is a tenant? Person who cultivate the lands of landlords on rent, called as tenant. So what is this tenancy reforms? Under this one, it was found that these tenants, they suffered a lot. They suffered a lot. Which type of problems they were there? There was no security given to these tenants. Anytime they can be thrown off from their jobs. Number one. Their rent, or we can also call as a share of the produce, were very less as a form of rent, as a form of produce. It was very less children. They were highly exploitatively. Okay, and there are other problems were there. So what happened children? The government had taken certain measures. Government has taken certain measures for this tenancy reforms. What are those measures are there children? The measures like regulation of rent. The measures like regulation of rent is the first measure. Regulation of rent. Followed by the second one is security of tenure. Second one is security of tenure is the second one. Third one, ownership rights. Third one is ownership rights. So now one by one we have to discuss children about these three measures. Regulation of rent, security of tenure, then ownership rights. Okay. Now let us discuss what is regulation of rent. Okay. Regulation of rent. Regulation of rent, here the states under this one, the rent was fixed. Under this one, the rent was fixed. The state were asked to fix maximum rent. To fix maximum rent. How much of the rent paid to by the tenant? So it should not exceed. It should not exceed to 1/2, that is half of the total produce. Should not exceed with the 1/2 of the total produce. Okay. What is second one? Security of tenure. What do you mean by tenure? I told you it is a time period. That means landlords are not having any right to remove the tenants at any time according to their wish. So under this one, security of tenure children, what happened? The landlords cannot remove. The laws were passed that landlord cannot eject, cannot remove the tenants anytime. Cannot remove the tenants according to their wish. According to their wish, they cannot remove the tenants. That is comes under the security of tenure. Then what is the last one? The last one is, children, is ownership rights. Under this ownership rights, then government passed, under this one, government passed certain laws. The laws of ownership. The laws of ownership to tenants. Laws of ownership to tenants. The laws were passed by the government to provide the ownership rights to the tenants. So in this way, what happened, children? The tenants were secured. Under this land reform component, the tenants were secured under these three measures. Regulation of rent. Rent will be paid accordingly by the government. Then security of tenure. No farmers can be removed. And then ownership right. The government passed the laws of the ownership to the tenants. So this is, children, but unfortunately what happened, children, in all the states of India, these laws were not uniform, not implemented uniform. Some states they accepted that one and many states they rejected that one. Then after this one, children, what is the third one? Ownership rights to the third one is ownership rights of the tenants. The third component is ownership rights to the tenants. Just by itself it is indicating, children, the not ownership rights. So the third one, it is about sealing of lands. Sealing of land holding is the third component. What is this sealing first? Let us discuss what do we mean by sealing first. So definition for the sealing. Definition for the sealing. That is fixing a statutory limit. Fixing a statutory limit on the maximum lands. On the maximum lands. On the maximum lands that a family can have. That a family can have. It is called as the sealing. So what we understand, children, by the sealing, it means that how much of the land is required by a family, that much of the land the family can keep it, okay, according to the family members. And the extra lands, whatever the landlords, zamindars, mahalwars they were having, all those lands will be taken by the government and the government seal that lands as a government lands. Why all these things were started? Because it was observed that in those days, more number of zamindars, they were as absentee landlords. Means they were having the lands in the form of villages and villages. Hundreds of villages were under their control. So what happened? These zamindars, even they didn't know that what was the produce of that land, what was the condition of that state of condition of that land. So all those types of lands are waste in the control of the zamindar or to a small family of zamindar. So government observed that one and government found that all those extra lands to be taken and that lands will be sealed. You know the seal, the lands will be sealed and the label will be there that belong to the government. That is called as sealings of land holding. So Jammu and Kashmir is the first state to adopt this sealing of land. Jammu and Kashmir is the first state to adopt this sealing of land. So what are the other things, children, for the sealing of land? I hope this definition is clear. So there are certain guidelines were given, children, for this sealing of land. Means in what way the government can take up the land, who are the people, those who get benefits from this sealing of land. So there are certain guidelines. Certain guidelines were given by the government. What are those guidelines? That is sealing limit. The first guideline, sealing limit. Sealing limit was as up to that it was be lowered to 18 acres of wetland, 18 acres of wetland and 54 acres of 18 acres of wetland and 54 acres of the dry lands. Sealing will be of limit will be the government can take 18 acres of wetland from the zamindars and 15 acres of 54 acres of dry land they can seal from the zamindar. Then next one, in this one, SC and ST are the first to get beneficiaries. Means these people they get first in the sealing of land. Means what if the land is sealed by the government, that land will be distributed first to the SC and ST. And the land where the plantations, you know children, plantation like coffee plantation, rubber plantation, tea plantation, all these plantation land will be exempted from sealing. Exempted from sealing. So this is children sealing of land holdings. So I hope the third component is clear to all of you. Sealing means extra land will be taken by the government. That land will be distributed to the poor people. What are the guidelines? Government can seal 18 acres of wetland. You know very well, wetland means agricultural, irrigated land. 54 acres of unirrigated lands. Who are the beneficiaries? SC and STs are the beneficiaries. And which type of land will be exempted? The plantation, where the plantations are there, all those types of land will be exempted from this one. So that is the third one. So now, after that, fourth component, the fourth component of land reforms. What is the fourth component? Consolidation of land holding. Fourth component is consolidation of land holdings. So what is this consolidation of land holdings? Consolidation of land holdings, children. In our country, we find that land holdings are, it means people are having lands in their control, but only small plots of land they are having. So why these small piece of lands are there? Why the lands are fragmented pieces? Because of the hereditary condition. In our country, as soon as the head of the family expired, we find that the property gets divided into their sons and the daughters and again the grandchildren. So in this way what happened? The big pieces of land, big plots of land gets divided into number of pieces. But from the small plots of land, it is very difficult to get the good cultivation, to get the good produce. So what the government is doing under this one? Government tried to mix all the small plots of land. In this one, whatever the small plots of lands are there, all these small plots of land, children, will be consolidated, will make into one big piece, and then the cultivation will follow. So in this one what happened? Why it is helpful, children? It is helpful to increase the production. It is helpful to increase the agricultural production. So this system was first started, children, in Punjab, in Haryana and Maharashtra. This system was started. Later what happened, children? Most of the problems occurred, children, among the people. There was differences were there among the people. So in this one what happened? This was not properly implemented. But it is mentioned that by September 2001, 1,633 lakh acres of land were consolidated. So this is, children, consolidation of land holdings. After this, then the fifth and the last component of land reforms. What is the fifth and the last component? That is cooperative farming. Cooperative farming is the last one. Cooperative farming. What is this cooperative farming? So it means that farmers of different areas, farmers of the particular area, they join together. They join together all their small holdings. Join together their small holdings. They join their small holdings by pooling lands. By pooling lands, called as cooperative farming. Simple one. Up to now we discussed consolidation, where the government is making all the small pieces into one piece. Now what this is cooperative, the small pieces farmers are there, children. So what they are doing, all these farmers, they are making their land into one by small what you call border, and they together jointly they do the cultivation in this small pieces of land jointly to get a good product. Cooperation by the farmers to continue to do the big piece of land. So what happened in the cooperative farming? Definitely cooperation. So among the farmers, the members are elected. The members are elected as a representative body, as a cooperative body. But what happened? This cooperative farming lost its importance because of, children, the same indifferences among the farmers, that is lack of motivation. It completely lacked motivation. The farmers continuously, they had clashes among themselves. They started domination each other, and inefficient farmers administration. Because of this, children, this cooperative farming became failure in most of the areas. So I hope, children, this is clear to all of you. The reforms, land reforms, components of the land reforms. Now, as we are discussing about the land reforms and the components, so most of that what we find, the land reforms were not successfully implemented in throughout the country. So there are certain what we call failures. So we have to discuss, children, critical appraisal. Critical appraisal means these land reforms were not properly implemented because of the following reason. First one is loopholes. Loopholes in the act. There are certain critical appraisal we have to discuss. Loopholes in the act, followed by lack of political will. The lack of political will is the second critical appraisal, followed by passive nature of the beneficiaries. Passive nature of the beneficiaries. Is the next critical appraisal, followed by bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is the next one. Then legal hurdles, followed by legal hurdles are the next one. Is the next critical appraisal. Then non-availability of records. Sixth one is non-availability of records. Non-availability of records is the next one. And the last one, children, that is delay in follow-up action. Delay in action. Delay in action. These are all called as, children, one or the other. The critical appraisal for this land reforms. So what is the first one? Loopholes in the act. What is this loopholes? Loopholes means there are certain gaps in the Land Reform Act. Land Reform Act, what are the points were there in this law, in this act? What happened? It was found by most of the prestigious lawyers, advocates, that there are many loopholes are there, means there are many faults are there in this act. And what they did, children, these people, they put a case in the court to stop that act in that particular state or the particular region. Because of that what happened, many of the people, they didn't submit their lands for sealing. They didn't go for the various land reforms. So because of the loopholes, people got a chance to escape. Landlords, especially who? Landlords, jagirdars, mahalwars, they got a chance to escape from the submission of the land to the people. Lack of political will. Children, as you all know that in the villages, political powers are very strong. And in the villages, people, they act like a puppets in the hands of the political parties, political leaders. So what happened, children? These political leaders, they know very well, and they are in need of support of zamindars, jagirdars. They don't want to upset these people. So what happened? These people, they themselves, they do each and everything so that the act should not be followed, implement in their particular area. So that is lack of political will. Next one is passive nature of the beneficiaries. Who are the beneficiaries? The common farmers, the tenants. It is found that though this law is for whom? For tenants, for the farmers, for the landless people. But these people are not at all showing, they are not demanding for their rights. Though this is there for the support, but they are not demanding. They show passiveness, dryness. Whatever is going on, let it to go. We should not fight for that. So because of that, no one is caring for this reform. Bureaucracy, government people, you know very well, most of the areas we find that the people those are related to this land, that is revenue department, most of the people we find, they are good people are there, but most of the people are corrupted. They create problems to the people to provide their rights. So they are also not supporting. So because of that, this land reforms get failure in many areas. Legal hurdles, just now I told that these law is having certain loopholes. So by legal, they are making that law to stay, not to implement in that particular areas. Then non-availability of records. Children, these zamindars, jagidars and mahalwars, they completely played the game, and there is no record for most of the lands. When the government asked them to submit their lands through this act, most of the zamindars, they submitted only 50% of the record. Remaining records are not submitted. So by the just a word is there that records are not available, and because when the records are not available, it is difficult by the government to seal that land immediately. Then delay in action. This is very common in our India. For each and everything, we find that there is a delay in each and every work. Still, that's what I said. These proper land reforms are not implemented in our country. So because of all these things, though we know that there are a number of hurdles are there by the law, government can correct those laws, government can re-implement those things by again with the new laws. But no, there is delay in the action that makes this land reforms very backward. And that too in the year 1991. Economic reforms were introduced. Economic reforms were introduced under liberalization, privatization, globalization, LPG. This LPG is completely, children, it is not making the government to concentrate on the agriculture and that to land reforms. Because of this, all these one we can say that still many areas are lacking land reforms. Children, land reform, proper implementation of land reforms. So children, this is today's topic. I hope everything is clear to all of you. If you have any doubt, children, you can call me, children. Go through the textbook, read the lesson, follow the material. Okay, so I hope everyone understood. So it's time to take leave, children. Thank you one and all. Thank you, children.